How are you? Can you hear me? I can't hear you. You're muted. No one can hear you. You're muted. So
I went through a whole speech and nobody could hear me.
And what's up with this? We keep wearing the same color shirt thing.
Yeah.
Crazy.
I got my Scooby-Doo shirt on today.
Oh, I love Scooby-Doo. You know,
my favorite.
He's your favorite?
One of my favorites, yeah. Probably my favorite cartoon.
And this is as good a time as any to talk about one of the exercises we do at PlayLab. We invite people to invoke from their favorite cartoons of pop culture or from their own imagination these caricatures, these ideas in their brain that help them, be like superheroes. And oftentimes we hear Wonder Woman, we hear Batman, and all the guys from today's Marvel comics and what is it, Iron Man, and I mean, there's just so many, really. And so when I tell people that, like, Scooby-Doo's my superhero, they're like, "What are you, crazy? That guy was just like chicken shit scared all the time." And also, I should have shut this off. My bad. And so what I tell them, put that on mute. Sorry about that, guys. What I tell them is that, well, wait a minute. Stop and think about Scooby-Doo. One, he's got really cool friends, guys and gals, right? Two, he always ends up, saving the day. And three, his formula for doing that is simple. Follow the Scooby snacks, Reggie. And so, like, whenever I'm scared, I just kind of invoke that silly little voice in my head, and it lightens up whatever I'm scared about, because I think, and this is a whole topic for another conversation, but there's a huge difference between the idea of fear and being afraid, which is so often created in our mind from back here. Gary the Gatekeeper, talk about him in the book. But when we get down to the difference between fear and danger, two very different things. And oftentimes fear stops us in our tracks when it shouldn't. And that's why we do goofy things at PlayLab, like tell you all to invoke your favorite cartoon character. So how cool is it that your favorite is also one of my favorites?
I love it. And even though Scooby and Shaggy are always scared, they still kind of power through it somehow. They still kind of find some way to get through the.
Oh yeah, that's amazing. Well, what do you want to talk about today? I've got a couple current events that are on my mind. Literally a conversation I just had, and a post that you shared with me in earlier. And then, of course, we got a big event this weekend. I want to make sure today, tomorrow, we're really clear with what's happening. But where do you want to start?
Yeah, I think, maybe just real quick, you talked about earlier, like Gary the Gatekeeper. And maybe we'll just talk about your book for just a few seconds. But I think, for me, I've read the book several times because you kind of got to let it sink in. But I thought it was really enlightening, especially the different kind of levels of consciousness aspect of it.
Yeah. I don't remember who told me this, but when they said it, I had, like, some people call them aha moments or light bulb moments. Like back in New England, there's this place called Marlboro, and it's a town, and we would say a light dawned on Marlboro Head. Like, it's like, oh, I finally get it. And I think for me, as I began the journey, a very curious journey of how play could really improve the quality of my life, I had a lot of curiosity, and I don't remember her name, but this woman said to me, "When's the last time you thought about your thinking?"
Yeah.
So, I mean, just think about that. Thinking about how we think. Well, that has to be a very active process to think about how we think. And let me start by saying probably most of the people who will hear this and view this probably will say they agree with this next statement, which is that there's enough neuroscience to understand two very distinct aspects of thinking: conscious active thinking, right? And subconscious autonomic or programmed thinking. When I woke up this morning, I didn't really think about it. I just started making my bed. That's autonomic, because I like to have, generally speaking, sometimes my house gets a little, busy looking. I wouldn't call it dirty or messy, but it's just like you can tell my life's been fast paced, and I've not hung up my clothes or put them in the dryer bin or something, right? Like, or I didn't catch all the counter. But generally, I like to keep a clean, living space. So I don't think about making the bed. It just kind of happens, right? Yeah. Now, if it doesn't look right, I actively think, how do I fix that? And generally speaking, that's a very simple thing because I've done it thousands of times through my life, right? So that's subconscious and conscious. Another good example of that, just in case that didn't work for people, how many of us have driven somewhere, and then when we get there, we're like, wow, that was fast. Which way did I go, right? Like our mind was somewhere else, but we still managed to get where we needed to go. That is the power of the subconscious brain. And here's the point I want to make, that most scientists who study brainwave thinking and consciousness levels say 90 to 95% of our waking hours are spent being directed by our subconscious. So my first thought about thinking was, well, everything I just said is kind of complex. And if you really get even deeper, you lose people. So I began using my imagination to say, wait a minute, why don't I just name the characters in my head? And no, I'm not schizophrenic, right? And no, I don't have multiple personality disorder, right? Like this was a playful way of saying it's okay to hear voices in your head because they're there, right? Yeah. Now, of course, if we don't address those kinds of things, they can lead to really psychosomatic and psychotic situations. And that's part of why PlayLab exists, is to create better mental health workplace environments to help support upward mobility in thinking, not downward, right? So to your point, as I did my research, I found that there were two really active states of thinking, not just consciousness, but what I called super consciousness. I'll talk more about that in a minute. And then there were two passive states of thinking, that which is autonomic, right? The subconscious. And you mentioned it when we talked about Gary the Gatekeeper, and I'll tell you about all four characters in a minute. But Gary the Gatekeeper is back near the amygdala. It's that part of the brain that doesn't even think. It just acts. So you have autonomic and you have that kind of what I call a sleep awakeness. And here's a good example when it happens. I'm sure many of you have said, what was I thinking? The truth is you weren't. Your autonomic response was overridden by some form of instant impulse that made you feel and act without even thinking. It could be in a bar and someone, comes up on your gal and like you just hit him. You're like, well, I should have thought about that first. Maybe I should have said be polite to my girlfriend instead of pounding him and now I'm spending a night in jail, right? Or it could be I'm at a ball game and I'm a little drunk and I'm really liking my team. This happened a lot in Boston, not to me, but or not by me, but by people around me. They have too many beers, and when the umpire called a strike or a ball and not a strike, like, man, people go bananas. Beers are going everywhere. They weren't thinking, right? They were just responding. So there is a fourth state, which is the imagination state, and that's active as well, super consciousness. So we gave them names. The guy who always says no and doesn't think, that's Gary the gatekeeper. The part of your brain that just does what you've already done, and it's 95% of your behavioral patterns, is Betty the blueprinter. You put a blueprint in your head from ages 0 to 7. Scientists call it the theta wave state, where all I'm doing is gathering. And the rest of your life, unless you do a major hardwire rewire of the brain by trumping it with something more valuable, you continue to default to the blueprint, Betty the blueprinter. But in consciousness, I can magically have the courage to act differently, decisively, courageously, compassionately, empathetically. It's like where decision making happens. I tell people, the 5% you spend conscious is probably where all your victories are won. And when you spend some of that time out in the superconscious, that's your imagination, that's different. So Adam the Achiever is consciousness, and Mandy the Magician is superconsciousness. And to anybody listening in LinkedIn, you say, what the hell does that have to do with work, right? It has a lot to do with work, because if you're hiring people with limiting beliefs, you're hiring people with high propensities to not think and just act, you're going to have some challenges. But if, on the other hand, you can teach those people, or you're hiring people who spend a lot more time in consciousness than the average person and actually have a high degree of imagination, then you're hiring people who are far more likely engaged, far more innovative, far more positive, far more reflective about everything they do. And by the way, who wouldn't want an employee like that? But to create that, they're not going to sit through a neuroscientific lecture, and nor should they. So that's why in the book, Play Saves the Day, we created 4 really cool cartoon characters. And at the end of the day, you get to choose what kind of thinking you want to drive what you do, right? And if you don't like the results in your life, if you want something that's more of what you already have, better than what you already have, or different from what you already have, you sure as heck got to learn how to spend time with Mandy the Magician and Adam the Achiever. And play is the magic of that, and even setting that frame. So I took a lot of time there, but hopefully it answers your question and it's useful to our listeners.
No, I think for me, that's one of the most important aspects of what we're doing, because it's you're right. What you say is, like the scientists say, we spend 90% of our time being basically in our subconscious, or even unconscious, you could say, just driving, just doing things automatically. We're not taking charge of our life, and we don't realize how much of our lives we don't control. I mean, we can't control the stock market or wars or anything really. We can't control anything except what's inside of us, right? Mm-hmm. And even that we only control 10% of ourselves, of our own thoughts. So anytime you can expand that, you regain more control back in your life, right? You take the control away from all the other things out there and bring it back to yourself. So I think it's super important and super powerful.
Yeah. Think of it this way. Most adults spend at least a small majority, and some more than a small majority, of their time in a workplace. And the reason why PlayLab is so hip, if you will, on experimenting with play is because it expands that window of 10%. If I was conscious just 2 or 3% more each week, think about what that could do, business owners, for bottom line profit, for innovative pivot ideas in a world that needs more change than ever in the corporate setting. I had a conversation yesterday with now a shared friend, a gal, Lindsay, up in, I think, Alberta, Canada. And one of the things we were talking about is whatever business looks like tomorrow, it's nothing like it looked like yesterday. Now, how long the today transition is to get to the tomorrow, we don't know, but we know it's happening faster than most corporate leaders know how to deal with it.
Mhm.
And play creates a platform in the workplace that binds people together, which it helps the diversity, equity, inclusion statement. It also creates the ability for emotional authenticity, which checks the box of psychological safety. It wildly activates the imagination, which supports ideation and innovation. It makes me mentally pliable, which means when you finally figure out how your business is going to change, the transition will be much easier because you have mentally pliable people, right? I mean, we can go on and on. And like, if you want to attach each of those things to bottom line, just think if I did those 4 things, are people leaving? No. People spend billions of dollars a year in managing their attrition problems. Really?
Yeah, people want to, they want a purpose, right? They want a meaning, a reason to show up to work. And I think a lot of companies don't provide that for their employees. And
They
even
don't.
they don't feel disconnected from each other as well, which is tough.
Yeah, and I think I was chatting early this morning on was it Facebook? No, on Instagram Messenger with one of my best friends. I'm having lunch with him next Tuesday in Phoenix, and his name's Brian North. So shout out to you, Brian. Brian will be with us this weekend, and Brian gets this. Like, he turned his literal building into a playground. Like, he made it, and I don't mean swing set playground, but I mean, like, he got concrete floors on purpose because 75% of his staff, and he's a real estate agency, and his realtors were millennials. And what are millennials like? Skateboards. You can literally skateboard through his office.
Oh, that's cool.
And millennials are also health conscious, and they also like all sorts of different beers. So he put a smoothie beer garden in part of the office.
Oh, man.
That literally they have every day. They put a playroom for realtors who are double income with kids. So sometimes I got to bring the kid to the office and keep him there for a little bit while I go show a house. I mean, how cool is that, right?
That's cool. I mean, I'm Gen X, but I still want to work there. I want to skateboard. I want to, I want to grab a
I want to work there too. He's a cool guy. They made sure they had we call them lanais here. They call them patios on the mainland, but he made sure he had a patio big enough to have Pauhana. There's Hawaii again. Happy hour on 3 nights a week, where they open up a barbecue 1 night a week and all cook. I mean, cool stuff.
Yeah, imagine having employees that on Monday morning they're excited to come to work. You know, how many people say, "Oh, Monday, oh, I hate Monday."
Yeah.
No, what do you say? "Oh, I love Monday because I get to go skateboard and have a beer with people after work, and that's bring my dog or my kid to work." Yeah, that's so cool.
Yeah, and he is the future model in the present. So, and all of this, by the way, comes when anyone begins, and I'm going back to where we started, thinking about their thinking. Most of us in society are willing to go as far as saying we don't like our workplace. They'll answer blind surveys all day. How do we know it? For the last 20 years, the engagement issue has crept up to now 80+% of the employees in the world don't like their jobs. Think about that. And think how that affects people going home. So by thinking about that thinking, and by the way, companies are not going to be able to retain the wild profits they've had unless they start addressing this, because now millennials are the biggest buying force in the world. Baby boomers used to be the single thing that made all the decisions for American business. And for 40 years, American business was the business. But all this political jargon of "Make America Great Again," and if you're political, sorry, but here's the truth. It's not about making America great. Like, it's about the fact that globalization means more countries are learning how to take care of themselves. And instead of competing with them, we should collaborate and everybody wins.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, and that's a hard thing for some companies to get. But the truth is, the big Fortune 100 companies of the world, like in 2020 versus just before the pandemic, they did a study, and 50% of the Fortune 500 companies in 2000 were no longer in existence in 2020. That's crazy. And then we lost another 30% of the Fortune 100 through bankruptcies, buyouts, like people saving them.
Yeah.
Yeah, like the idea of big giants, and I'll never forget the year Nike made $42 billion in net profits after they paid everybody. I mean, come on now. Like, what are you going to do with all that?
Yeah, it's changing. I mean, it's changing.
It is changing.
I read a report today, and I think I sent it to you earlier, was about, I think like 58% of people in the world, and they went, I think they looked at like 1,500 different people or 1,500 different companies. 58% of people in the world are dealing with mental health issues right now. So that means at least half the people have some kind of mental health issue going on. So that means that either you or someone, multiple people, at least half the people are dealing with the mental health issue.
Well, you also sent me something from the Surgeon General that I took a little time to look at.
That too.
That was amazing. Like that data report, we'll share on PlayLab and our personal feeds as well. Like that data needs to be out there. They had 3 statistics. All 3 of them were 70%. I think the highest was 84%. So 7 of 10 or more reported early signs of mental health issues, reported that the workplace contributes to their mental health issues. And forgive me, I forget what the last one was. But think about that. That's a lot of, like if I'm a billionaire today and I'm not looking at my C-suite team saying, we need to roll back our bonuses and start putting money into our people. We need to know if our people are healthy or not, right? So, man, maybe we should be bold and tag people like, well, Richard Branson is like the angel in this area. He takes care of his people, right? But like, if you think about the Bezoses of the world and the Elon Musks of the world and the Bill Gates and blah, 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 blah. I get the Zuckerbergs. I mean, there's so many of these people. I think once I heard that Bill Gates gave half of his fortune away. Is that right? Something like that?
I think he's part of some kind of plan to give away like 80 or 90% of it.
Yeah, a lot, right? To me, that's putting your money where your mouth is, right? Yeah. Like when somebody who's worth $1 billion donates $1 million, I'm like, that's no big deal. It's nothing. He makes 10 times that in interest every day, right? Like giving by its very nature is both joyful and oftentimes has an element that says, I'm gonna enjoy something less to ensure somebody else can have a little more. And this is the underlying premise of the workforce. And like, eventually we're going to have an audience, Matt. Like today, no one's here. That's okay. But we're going to keep speaking. And thousands, and then hundreds of thousands, and then millions of people will listen. Why? Because this message, I know, and resonates with 80% of the globe. So as that voice gets louder and heard, and like that post you tagged me in where you were, and congratulations, you were honored as like one of the most prolific, I forget the words they use, but influencers would play or something like that. When they said that, I was like, yeah, that's my boy, right? They tagged you as that. And I thought, that's what PlayLab's all about. It's not about you, me, our other partners. And sure, it's great when we get the acknowledgement that you got today, but it's about being a collective, a force, a voice that says, because I posted in, I finally found my tribe, right? Like all those people, they're not my competitors. We need each other, right? And I think this is all the excitement that play brings to the table, because on the playground, there's room everywhere for everyone. There's no scarcity on playgrounds. None.
Yeah, everybody's welcome. Everybody knows how to play. Everybody in the world plays at every age, every culture. So let's all play together. And like you said, we're not going to stop this message. And I'm sure of it, that there's hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of people who believe the same way we do, who believe.
No doubt.
Yeah, that
and in a world with 7-8 billion people, I don't know what it is today, but I know it's a lot. I can't even comprehend what that looks like, right? Like, that's a lot of people, right? Every now and then they say, well, here's how you would see 1 million people if you fill up 50 stadiums 20 times or something like that. That's 1 million people. You know, they do these kinds of things. Or if you put a person line by line around the globe X number of times, you know, whatever. But here's the truth. Even if it's just a few million, it's still a loud voice when we come together. And the truth is deep down, no one was taught how to play. It's how we came at birth. And if we can get past all of the narratives that have been said about play, you know, that it's not for the workplace, that I should act my age and not my shoe size. My age is 56. My shoe size is 10, right? I'm going to act 10 in the very best ways. Because oftentimes what happens with that statement is it's when mom and dad was saying, please just be aware of your surroundings, right? Don't
trying to protect you. Yeah.
But the truth is what happened is it became this idea of grow up.
Yeah.
And I'm never growing up.
Stop messing around, you know, stop screwing around, you know.
Yeah, I'm not doing
it. Get to work.
This morning in the shower, I was dancing as loud as I could, singing as loud as I could. And, you know, if anybody else had been here, they'd be like, who is the goofball in the bathroom? No, it's me. And that made me happy. And, you know, and for others, making them happy is, you know, chopping cords of wood, listening to Sweet Home Alabama, right? Somebody else, it might be building a robot to go play in Robot Wars. Somebody else, like I saw on TikTok the other day, this 20-year-old and his friend sailing around the world. Like, how cool is that?
Yeah.
Play looks different for all of us. And with that said, the purpose of these types of conversations for us is to capture your attention, to awaken your curiosity. Because when you awaken your curiosity biologically, you just gave yourself fuel to create a new and better you, because your body begins to reward you with the pleasure chemical dopamine. It says, that felt good, be more curious, right? That way beats doing a line of Coke to get your dopamine. That's the honest truth, right?
It's a lot more healthier for sure.
Yeah, a lot more healthy. It's legal, right? You know, and et cetera. Like, so why don't you tell everybody what we got going on this weekend in no uncertain terms, because it's an event, but it's also the kickoff to what we hope will become a social media kind of thing, yeah?
Yes, so this event, Steve, in the name of play and mental health, is going to attempt to break the world record for 36 hours, a little bit more than that, swinging on a swing. And we're going to have a 36-hour conversation while he's swinging about mental health and about play. And so we invite you to just tune in over the weekend. And if you want to be part of that conversation, if you want to join in and talk with Steve and share your thoughts on mental health, mental wellness, and play, just get in touch with us. And you can even send me an email or Matt at experimentwithplay.com. We'll get you hooked up with how to do that. Or just connect with me, Matt Heineke, or Steve Ricks on LinkedIn. And again, we'll get you hooked up. So we appreciate y'all being here. And we'll see you again tomorrow.
Same time, right?
Same time, same bat channel tomorrow.
Yeah,
and,
I love it.
I'll fill you in a little bit more, but we're super excited, pumped up for this weekend. Let's create the play army and improve everybody's wellness around the world.
Love it. See y'all tomorrow.
Bye.